Hello, my name is Sean Ennis from Ennis Management, and thank you for joining me once again here on the Creative Collective. And today I'm honored to be joined by a very talented musician. He is a singer-songwriter from Texas, James Lee Baker.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, thank you for joining me today. So, talk to me about the music scene in Texas.
Yeah, well, Texas is pretty big, so there's a lot of opportunity to perform in various places. There's a strong folk scene in the Austin area, and some venues in Dallas, but there's also house concerts and listening rooms that are peppered throughout Texas. I primarily am in the Texas Panhandle, but I spend most of my time performing in other places.
And what genre of music do you consider your work to be?
I think I teeter the line between folk and Americana. I would consider myself a folk artist, but a lot of the sound that I produce in the studio tends to have more of a country influence. So Americana is a good middle ground for that.
And can you think of one of your earliest memories involving music?
Yeah, when I was a little kid, my father was a drummer for a rock band, and he steeped us in classic rock and other music my whole life. And so we'd wake up in the mornings, 6:30, to getting ready to go to the babysitter, and my dad would play music on the record player. And so oftentimes it was albums like Rumors by Fleetwood Mac, or other projects, other albums as well, other bands. So I think those are probably the earliest memories that I have, is growing up to my parents playing music on the record player.
And can you describe your first time performing in front of a live audience?
Well, I mean, if you don't count like summer camps, music summer camps, and church-related functions, I think one of the first times I performed in front of a crowd as an acoustic artist was at my high school talent show in my junior year. I performed an original song that I wrote, and it was in front of, I'd say 500 people or so. It was a lot of people, which was pretty nerve-wracking at that time.
And what sort of emotions and feelings did you experience during that first performance?
Oh, it was just very nerve-wracking. I was extremely nervous. I had cotton mouth, so it was difficult. Yeah, but it was fun. People were encouraging in the audience, and I ended up playing again the next year, my senior year, and that went really well. I had grown and developed as an artist, so yeah.
And so tell me a little bit about your music journey. How did you develop into an artist who makes original work?
I think the writing process was a natural evolution for me. I started writing poetry when I was in middle school, mostly as a form of self-expression and identification, and that sort of blossomed into creative writing. I never really connected the two until recently. When I was in my 20s, I started doing slam poetry and other things, and I even published a book of poems, but I had never really connected that side to the music side until the last few years, where I realized there was a lot of power in combining both together, using play on words and other things to create a rich experience in a song. Yeah.
And what would you say are the main themes or topics for most of your songs?
They vary. I try to keep it pretty diverse, So I like to write songs about cities and about, historical characters, about fictional characters that are unconventional. And those things are, I find there's a lot of untapped potential in that sort of stuff, and that's something that I think folk artists do really well. Bob Dylan's a good example of that. He can create these really vivid stories about characters that don't exist, and I think that's just awesome, because you're essentially a novelist that's writing short stories that are 3 to 4 minutes long. So in some ways, it's kind of like wearing two hats, and I really enjoy that.
And can you talk about how you've used storytelling in some of your music?
Yeah, I think I learned a lot of this from Ellis Paul. He's a folk singer. He kind of taught me the ways of storytelling, but it's about using words and phrases in a song in such a way that it creates a crisp visualization for the listener. It's very sensory. So, when it comes to stories, there's one song that I've written that I haven't released yet, called "Returning to Paris," where, again, taking an unconventional approach to songwriting, a couple decides to go back to Paris after being married for 10 years because they want to end their marriage. And they decide to end their marriage in Paris peacefully. And the story walks through all of these details. And the details are very subtle, but they sort of help paint the picture, like laying on the grass, laying under the stars on the dying grass above, in front of the Eiffel Tower, for example. So there's a lot going on in that song in terms of visualization, talking about what the characters are thinking and feeling. Those are the sort of things that I enjoy writing about.
And that's a little bit different, because you would think that people going to Paris are going there to, celebrate or rekindle a romance, not call it quits.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to do in terms of turning it upside down. I've done that with other songs similarly, where I can say, how do I take this concept and turn it on its head and do something different with it?
Yeah, that's definitely really creative. So let me ask you, what music or artists have had an influence or an effect on you?
Oh man, I am definitely an audiophile, and so and I listen to a lot of music. So there's so much influence. As a folk artist, David Gray was one of the principal artists that influenced me the most, and there's others as well: John Gorka, David Mead, Ellis Paul. Those artists have been the bulk of my influence in terms of folk. Bob Dylan, especially. I love his writing. If you look past his voice, you begin to realize just how good of a writer he is, and he considers himself a poet before a songwriter. So those artists have influenced me the most in folk. But I mean, in general, like I really love a lot of different types of music. I'm a big fan of Metallica. I'm a big fan of Third Eye Blind. So I like a little bit of rock as well. I'm a huge fan of Michael Hedges, the late Michael Hedges. His introduction into neo steel string classical music was groundbreaking, and he continues to have ripples of his influence in artists that are emerging today.
That's really interesting. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that?
On Michael Hedges?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so Michael Hedges was, he was born in Oklahoma, and he went to the Peabody Conservatory of Music, and he came out of college as good as if he had been doing it for 10 years. He was just truly a prodigy, and he introduced a lot of techniques that artists are now using today. If you see the artists on YouTube videos that are slapping their guitars or doing two-handed tapping techniques and harmonics and other strange things, percussive stuff, all of that was really, it really sort of began with Michael Hedges. I mean, there are other artists that were doing things in that capacity, but he was one of several sort of, I guess, fathers of that concept concept or those concepts in music. And he ultimately ended up having to work with John Stropes to have his own type of musical notation created, because the things that he was doing on his guitar, there was not a way in modern music notation to notate them in sheet music. So that alone was highly influential. But most importantly, it's just, knowing that he was able to take an instrument, a common instrument like an acoustic guitar, and do so many strange things with it that were just so tasteful. And most of the songs that he wrote had their own tunings. I mean, he would tune the guitar strings to match the timbre that he was looking for in creating the right voicings of the instrument. So he knew the instrument well enough and the theory well enough that the guitar itself was a very expressive instrument, and that most artists don't use as expressive as he did.
Wow, that is so incredible. And so you and he have something in common, because you went to school and studied music as well.
Yeah, I think if that's a common thread, then yeah, we did. So I think I appreciate his music because of my understanding of music theory. For example, he uses klangfarben melody a lot in his music. And klangfarben melody is basically this concept where you take two instruments, or in the case of a guitar, two strings, and they play the same pitch, but because they are different in characteristics as a string, they still sound different. For example, if you played a note on the very bottom string of a guitar, and you play the same note on the highest string of the guitar, even though it's the same pitch, they're going to sound different because the strings are different in thickness. So he took advantage of that in his music in a way that artists don't today, I think, by creating rich songs that were using these techniques. And klangfarben melody is a concept that was introduced by Arnold Schoenberg hundreds of years ago in classical techniques.
And
so I appreciate that stuff just because of music theory.
Absolutely. And where did you go to school? And then also, what did you learn in school that has helped you in your music career?
I went to a local community college here in Texas. And I say the main things that have really helped me as a musician were music theory. Well, music theory has helped tremendously. And composition as well. They've helped me understand the language of music, reading sheet music, and understanding how to form a song. Right? There's a process when it comes to creating chords and what chords to use and how to transition to them and so forth. So I attribute music theory and other things from my education towards me being the musician that I am today.
Now, can you talk about a past performance you've had that really sticks out or is memorable?
Yeah, I've had a lot of good performances in the last few years. I think that the last performance that I had that I really loved, really enjoyed, was a performance that I did at a place called the Depot in Norman, Oklahoma. It's this train station, an old train station that's no longer a station. It's an historic building, and they have folk artists that come and play. I had the opportunity to open up for an artist there, and it was a very responsive crowd. They listened. They were really, they really appreciated the songs, and I enjoyed bantering with them back and forth, and it was just a really memorable experience.
And that is something that I've talked to with a lot of different artists about, that experience of being on stage and that connection that you get with an audience. Can you talk about your own experience in terms of performing and what that's sort of like?
Just about connecting with people?
Yeah, whatever. What is it that you love about performing?
Having an impact on people who are listening to the music. I mean, there's nothing more valuable than for somebody to come up to you and say, your song was amazing, or it really affected me. I loved the story, and I felt like I was being pulled into it. I felt like I was right there with you in the story, that sort of thing. I hear those things from people from time to time, and it's very inspiring, because it means that I'm moving in the right direction, that I'm hitting the vein in some ways, and that helps me become a better artist, and it also keeps me motivated.
Absolutely, because that's certainly a challenge, as a musician who's trying to build a fan base and get their music out there, to get people to pay attention. So it certainly makes sense that getting that feedback, being on stage performing, and being able to, get that acknowledgement from the audience would be something important and impactful to you.
Yes, sir. Yeah, definitely.
Now, which songs do you perform most frequently?
I'm an original artist, so anything that's been released I tend to perform. Lately I've been performing songs from an upcoming album that I'm working on. But yeah, mostly just original songs.
Okay, so let's talk about your Home Again album.
Okay.
Can you tell me about the concept behind that album and sort of the process of putting it together?
Yeah, the concept was, it was just a collection of songs that I had recorded over the years, and mostly a Texas country influence. I wanted to play with that and see how it would work. So I met a great artist named Tobias Wilson, who lives in the UK, and he did a lot of session work for us with dobro, lap steel, and pedal steel, and as well as other instruments. So in some cases, guitar, bass, and drums. He provided the whole package. But he really helped me shape the sound of the album to give it a real commercial country Americana feel. So that was the goal going in, and I think it's been pretty well received. It's been a good learning experience too.
And why did you aim to make a commercially viable project? Why was that important?
Exposure. Trying to get exposure has been critical for me, for any artist really. And so I wanted to, as a Texas artist, I wanted to try and match the cadence of what was going on in the industry. Here in Texas, there's a lot of country artists who have a unique sound, and the Texas sound is a lot more, I think, original. The lyrics are a little bit more, crisp and have a story to offer. So that's something I was trying to match the cadence of.
And can you name a few of the songs off the Home Again album?
Yeah, so Disappear for the Weekend is the current single. We're going to be putting out a song called The First Time sometime this week. Both those are kind of upbeat tunes. Then this fall we have a single that we're putting out called If I Stay Here With You. That'll have a music video that we're working on getting produced right now. Those are the three songs I think that stand out the most. And
talk a little bit about each of those three songs to me. What they're about, who wrote it.
Well, I wrote all of them. Disappear for the Weekend is a song about getting away from town and getting out of town with someone that you love and going somewhere that you've never been. Just sort of a romantic summertime, driving down the highway kind of thing. The First Time is a unique song in terms of the storyline. It's about the concept of trying things for the first time, and how the first time is that you do something is always different and will never be the same. Oftentimes we want to try and recreate in life what we experienced before, and often fail to do so because the first time we experience something, it's a very memorable and special experience. So that song's about that. And then finally, If I Stay Here With You is really a song about a musician who is in a tryst or a romantic situation with a woman and decides, that he makes it clear that, his future is on the road. His future is driving a music career, and that's what he was called to do, and he feels like he was made to do that. And she wants to have a future with him, and he has to explain to her that's not what he wants. So it's kind of a sad song. Yeah, those are the three songs that I think stand out the most on this LP.
Now, each one of those songs are so varied and cover a bunch of different subject matter. I'm really interested to know what inspires you to write these songs and make music.
I don't know. I get inspiration from the strangest places. I just finished a song called Wipe the Dust Off the Bellows. It's a song about an old man who was in a band with a guy. He calls him and he's leaving a message on his answering machine saying, hey, I wish we could get together and play. I know, ever since your wife died, I haven't heard from you, that sort of thing. And he's just trying to kind of coax him out of the shadows to come out and play and get back into the cadence of living again. So I bring that up because that idea just came from me having lunch with some friends, and I'm sitting there, and one of my friends says to another, he says, you should get your accordion out. You should play your accordion. And my friend says, yeah, I need to wipe the dust off the bellows. And I pull my phone out. I write that line down. I'm like, that's a good line. And sure enough, within a week, I had fleshed out a full song out of it. So, inspiration comes in the strangest places.
Wow, that's really incredible. That you just something as simple as that would turn into a song.
Yeah.
All right, so let me ask you, what's a challenge that you've faced in your music career, and how have you been able to overcome that challenge?
I think exposure in a new community has been pretty difficult. When I decided I wanted to spend more time in the Folk Alliance community, I realized that I didn't have a lot of connections to do that. I didn't have the network, and so I started going to songwriting retreats and workshops and networking with artists that were teaching, as well as students that were moving up in their music career and wanting to learn more, and that was the start of the network. By investing into things like that, I was able to spend time with people in songwriting circles and get to know them a little bit, and then those individuals helped me understand the sort of things, the places I need to be, and the sort of people I need to be talking to. And so that was how I ended up overcoming that challenge, was just trying to find creative outlets, ways for me to meet people.
Yeah, and I think, because we live in the digital age of music, that I think that I actually know that that's a challenge for a lot of musicians, getting offline, going into the real world, and talking and networking with not only other artists, producers, promoters, booking agents, venue owners, and even fans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, what are your future goals or the ultimate direction that you would like to see your music career take?
Well, I'm in the process of putting out a new album, and my hope is that album is going to give me some more exposure. I've been working really hard, making sure that I have the best product I can possibly create. So I've been doing a lot of songwriting coaching and vocal lessons and going to retreats and doing editing and writing and sending songs to critique services. I've worked on trying to find like the ideal studio, and I found a great place in Austin. And I've been working with some of the best musicians in the industry, and I'm just going to keep going with this project. I just hired a stylist, an art directionist who's going to help me with my wardrobe and my brand. And ultimately my goal is by the time this album rolls out in February or March of next year, it's going to be very well thought out and very well planned and the best possible release I can put out. And that my hope from that is that there'll be some exposure that comes from that, that people really enjoy the project.
Now, what advice could you give for an aspiring musician or a musician just starting out in their music career? Learn as much as you can. I mean, there's so much information out there, and when it comes to music theory, when it comes to software and recording, like there's just so many things that you can learn. And I would encourage people to learn the things that make them uncomfortable. Like learn things that are difficult. Like one of the things that I learned as an acoustic performer is neo-steel string classical guitar techniques. I learned open tunings. I learned how to play classical pieces on an acoustic guitar that were really difficult. And in the process of doing that, I developed fingerstyle picking skills that I would not have developed otherwise. And so find something that's difficult. If it's piano for you, pick up, common masterpieces. Learn Canon and D. Learn Moonlight Sonata. If you work on expanding your electric guitar skills, learn jazz. Like find something that's difficult and learn it and get to a point where you've mastered that in some capacity, and you'll realize that the kind of artist you want to become, and that you can build talents, small talents in a way that help you as an artist as a whole. That's some really good advice.
Thank you.
Now, can you share your social media links?
Yeah, you can find me at jamesleebaker.com. I'm also on Facebook and Twitter, Instagram at James Lee Baker. Twitter is JL Baker Music. And you can find me anywhere where you can download digital music or stream it.
Is there anyone you'd like to acknowledge for offering you financial or emotional support on your musical journey?
Yeah, the fans that continue to listen to my music and support me I think are very important. My manager, Michael Stover, has been very instrumental in helping me get exposure, and the songwriting community as well. Artists like myself who are out there trying to do the same thing I am.
Is there anything else you'd like to promote or share?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
All right, I'd like to thank my guests for joining me today on the Creative Collective. As always, write your comments below. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video. And for all of your promotion, marketing, and music career consulting needs, email ennisproductions@gmail.com.